pediatrician, when I was first getting started in practice, I ran into a big pain point. I happened to start practice in Silicon Valley at a time when managed care was rolling through. When I started, we were seeing about 3 families an hour. Within about 18 months, we were seeing 8 families an hour. And I was exhausted, and the patients hated it. So I brought up this idea to colleagues, why don't we ask the patients what to do? And people said that was crazy, because if you told them there's a problem, it'll make them unhappy, and any solutions they come up with won't be practical. They won't be realistic. But I was young and naive, and we started having meetings with families and saying, what do we do? And out of that sprang incredible innovation in the practice of medicine. And throughout the course of my career, the best innovations have come from listening to patients. So here we are, starting our day of innovation with the people on the front lines. So very quickly, let's just go down and introduce each other, introduce ourselves down the row, and so people know who's on the table, who's on the stage, and we will go from there.
Good morning. I'm glad you're crazy, because it sounds like you have some great ideas. My name is Marguerite Seda. I'm coming from the Washington, D.C. area, and really glad to join you this morning.
Hi, my name is Kezia Fitzgerald. I'm a parent innovator. We innovated the company Caroline Products, and we come from just north of Boston, Massachusetts.
Ditto? Oh, my name is Mike. And
Hi, my name is Amber Schubert, and I have twin boys, one having HLHS, and I'm happy to be here, and I thank you so much for bringing the parents here and giving our perspective.
Hello, I'm Cambria Sheridan, and my youngest son, Taven, is a patient of Dr. Ching's and other doctors around here. Quite the team, and we are happy to be here and be a part of this program. And this is Taven's older brother, Tyler.
Hello. You guys hold it, because I think I'm mic'd still, yeah. And all of us, obviously, I'm a mom to 2 kids, a daughter to a chronically ill person, and a patient myself. So I think what we want to do is think about, how are we getting started? One of the things I've been kind of pushing out to the world, at least where I work at Seattle Children's, is when we create solutions, we want to co-design them. So in the kind of paternalistic way that we've done things, like I said before, right, we kind of have had this top-down innovation. We do things inside our silos. It's very hard for folks on the outside who create great new solutions, kind of in the makers movement spirit, to kind of get in. But I think one of the things we want to do is think on how do we listen differently, and really how is innovation, and even kind of different ways in which we exchange information, seek information, and even kind of control our own data, from just wearables to our notebooks and binders we make for our children as we navigate the health space. So I guess one of the first questions I'd love to have you respond to is, how is transparency in the world using digital technology, or even with kind of open access, the open notes movement things? How is transparency in the health space changing your experiences as a parent advocate and as a patient advocate, or even for your own children? Just one of you wants to start there.
I think it's really critical to break away from insular thinking, to look outside of hospitals. I've been through 4 children's hospitals. I have a son who has tetralogy of flow, and I had a son who had hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So I've actually been involved and in the business for 28 years. And I do see a change with that, but I think transparency is built on trust and relationship building. So you can be transparent, but if you haven't built that trust, and I know that you care about my children, that transparency isn't going to be effective for me.
I feel the same way. I have very good relationships with our cardiologist, Dr. Chang, and having a 8-month hospital stay, you start to feel very comfortable in the hospital setting, and when you go home, you feel uncomfortable and scared. Having a doctor who is so supportive of your family, who you can call or text and he'll get back to you right away, it's a crutch that we needed to have, and it was so wonderful to have just a feeling that he cared enough to do that. I don't know any doctor that would give us his personal information and allow us to answer, to ask questions as need be so openly. And that was such an important part of our journey.
Yeah, and my hope is that, I agree, and not every physician is, that's kind of that spectrum of privacy I think we have on both sides, right? Of how do we share our own data, how do we acquire our own data, how do we get our children's information and organize it and share it. So I'd love some of other thoughts too on, does kind of the centeredness around your data or experience, the transparency into what others are experiencing with similar diagnoses or conditions, so in that kind of peer-to-peer space, or also even just new technologies with electronic health records, or even patient portals. Is that changing so that you don't have to be the lucky one with the doctor who gives you a personal cell phone? Because I think the journey for most of us is that we don't have that access. I love that you have that access. I think it gives you a rich place for us to help figure out how do we change it so that it feels more like that for families who don't get handed a cell phone number. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that, or if your experience has been different, or have had frustrations that you could help share with the group.
No, I've had a wonderful response with communication with doctors. All of our team has been quite open and given cell phone numbers, and you take them home, and after the NICU stay or after a heart surgery, you are scared and worried, and when you have questions at 10 o'clock at night, a quick little text, and Dr. Chang gets back to us right away. It just makes you feel a little bit better. I live not far from Chalk, but 30 minutes, far enough, so at 10 o'clock at night, it makes it a little difficult, to go down there just for a question. So it's nice to have that open communication and cell phone.
So maybe we should shift to just talk a little bit about, well, answer first. Just, a different way. We don't have to keep talking about communication, but.
I think one of the big things that I found is that, so we had a daughter who had neuroblastoma, and what we ran into a lot of times was it's sort of difficult to communicate with doctors. I mean, in the sense that you're scared as a parent, and sometimes it's difficult, but it's really easy to communicate with other parents. And so I found that some of the social media groups and some of the ways that people are now meeting each other from a parent to parent and a peer to peer perspective are really helpful in knowing like what questions to ask, because you can see somebody who had already been through that experience, and you can see somebody who said, well, this is what I asked, and it got me all the information I needed, and you say, wow, if I had just known to ask that question. And it kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of empowerment as a parent, because sometimes you feel that your fear overcomes your ability to think clearly in a doctor meeting, and sometimes sitting late at night when your child is finally asleep after however long it's been, you're sitting at your computer and talking to another mom, and she's like, well, talk to your doctor about this, or ask your doctor what the possibility are of going home early, or things like that really help you to be able to say, okay, I can do this. And I think that's a huge benefit to opening up those lines of communications with the doctors, and then hopefully your doctor will be the one who will actually listen. And I think that sometimes you find that in your physicians' parents, and those parents will be able to have the confidence to continue that communication.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. The open communication and the transparency is a must now. I mean, this isn't 20 years ago, it's not 10 years ago, and in our case, it's not even 5 years ago anymore. Transparency wasn't something that was available to us a lot when our daughter was being treated. And, there's a lot of new technology that's come out now for communication, data, having, so clinicians can make better decisions, care teams can make better decisions. That wasn't available at the time, so one of the things we did was we decided that we weren't going to have it. And we actually taught ourselves how to communicate with the medical professionals. And I think that's very important, and one of the ways we did that was, one of the ways I did is just take a deep breath, and physicians are people, human beings. They're there because they want to help people, and we have to utilize that. And so one of the things I learned about transparency was the harder we go against the force, the worse off we are. So I learned really quickly to get the doctors to kind of go with our force and our family and get them to learn who we are as people, And I think that really helped us a lot, and that helped them too, because we had some of our primary care physicians come up to us and say, well, I really appreciate you saying what you said to me and asking me that question. I wasn't thinking of it that way. And when Dr. Obang said that to me, and she's one of my daughter's oncologists, I knew right then and there that she was the person who needed to be taking care of my daughter, because she asked questions. And it took me kind of asking the right question to get that out of her. But I think that worked out really well, and that helped us in our innovation as well. Communication and innovation and transparency from parents is huge. It's got to be. You have to approach the right physicians, the right nurses. The resistance is getting less, it seems, from my experience in the last couple of months, actually. But when it comes to innovation and the parent experience, I think that our personal experiences in the hospital really helped that process, and it gave us a whole different perspective on what we needed to do to help our child, not just with the products that my wife, I take no credit for that whatsoever, designed, but for some other things that we had ideas for and future things we're working on. And it all comes from healthy communication and assertiveness. And assertiveness is very important in that communication as well.
And you two have really demonstrated that. I met Mike and Kezia at South by Southwest, where they were part of a patient Shark Tank, or an innovator Shark Tank with Mark Cuban, and it was really interesting. But the way that you humanly expressed what was going on absolutely floored the room. And that kind of communication is what Wendy C. was talking about at the heart of medicine. I want to pivot. Oh, I should say something really quickly. A lot of people think that patients want their health information private. There's like this thing called HIPAA that was designed around that. And there's truth, deep truth in that. But at Scanadu, we make devices for people to explore their own bodies. And we did a survey recently asking folks, what do you want to do with that data? And 66% of the patient population wanted to share it with other patients and family members and friends, what you were talking about. They want to be able to have a dialogue about stuff. So transparency is coming faster than I think the medical establishment thinks. But I wanted to pivot real quick and talk about pain points and frustration. We've got a room full of innovators here, and you have the floor. So what is it in the whole healthcare experience that's the most frustrating, that you wish were different? We've already heard a little bit about how it's when you go home and you're alone, and that you feel sort of lost in that spot. But what in the whole experience would you love to see changed?
I would like to see some, or more, I should say, not necessarily physicians, because I've never had any resistance from physicians in my ideas, but different levels in the hospital be more accepting to patient-parent thoughts and ideas and innovation. And even when there's a case presented and it's your child, and you're listening to the team come in and do rounds, I think that if there's a pain point that the parent or even the child is expressing that's not being taken care of, they need to be more open-minded to what that parent or child is saying instead of what they're doing in the books and what they learn in college. And I've told many physicians to get out of your school books, get out of that whole realm. That doesn't discount the books, that doesn't discount your education at all. But what I find is that most physicians are doing that. They're thinking out of that box. Okay, well, this is the way we've been doing it for 20 years. Something's not right. We need to think something different. So I would like to see less resistance in the medical world.
And Mike, can you be specific? One of the things I think that we're all tasked with and challenged with is how do we take not just like how to outside ideas. So, and I'll call an outside idea a patient-generated solution. Give us some examples of how you've been successful getting your solution from the time that it's been built into other people's lives. So operationalized within a system, operationalized within a public. Tell us kind of what's been some success stories, or maybe some profound failures we can learn from.
I'll tell you, one profound failure is we thought we had the best thing since sliced bread. And as an innovator, when we go to our first conference with just samples that we scraped together and didn't eat for 2 weeks because we needed to make these samples, because this was important, we bring it to a conference and we get all these leads. And then the brick wall hit. Then the reality set in that the medical world is not quite open to what I have to do and say. And then the other problem is that when you have a product and you really need to research who you need to market these products to and how you're going to do it. I spent a lot of money at the wrong conferences, and conferences are how you market these products. Success stories, it works. I don't have anything else to say about that. It was something that was needed, is still needed, and as soon as we had less resistance than other people that I know that have innovated, but as soon as nurses and physicians and parents saw what my wife did, they got it right away. And I think that was the biggest success that I could do is just let the product speak for itself, use the story, and then when I let it speak for itself, they see the product on us, they see it on children, they get it, and then they start helping us the process of getting it into the hospital. Some hospitals take 1 day to accept it, bring it into the system, get us into their vendor accounts, and order products. Other hospitals take 3 years. One hospital I'm dealing with right now is taking 3 years to get this into the hospital. That's still a success because we were persistent and we weren't willing to take no for an answer.
I was just going to say that I think one of the biggest things that we did right at the very beginning was listen. So we had one perspective. So we had the perspective of our own child and the few children that we had made, I had made products for on the wing with her. So, we didn't have a vast knowledge of, every PICC line that existed, every central line that existed, every use that it was used for. So one of the biggest things that we found was we actually, when we put them out there the first time, we took feedback very seriously. We made changes based on what other people told us. This works for us, but not for this person because of X, Y, Z. And so we took that very seriously. And I think that was the biggest benefit, being able to say, I'm not perfect, I don't know everything, just because I have one experience, but being able to listen and say, I want to help all of you, not just the 3. And so that was one of the things that I really felt was the most important at the beginning.
That's really interesting, especially in light of what Mike just said about the biggest pain point is resistance to feedback in the medical system. What have you found, Marguerite?
I'm going to go back to your question because I haven't done anything like bravo. Great stuff there. I think what would have made a change in my stays in hospitals, living in a hospital for 3.5 months, I think we've all had that experience, is the communication and getting to the decision maker. So you can't imagine what it's like when you get up in the morning and you're waiting to hear just something about your child. And you have layers of people that you're going through and you're really not getting to that decision maker. So, and you'll do things like not get up and do the shower, you're waiting and waiting and waiting. So why aren't we looking at something creative for communication? Maybe a Snapchat, maybe the doctors do a Snapchat that, they come into the room, they're doing their rounds, they leave, communication for the parent gives some feedback. Hey, I know there are a lot of people in here looking at my child, but I've kind of noticed this is happening too. That happened to me. Wound up, my son had paralysis of his left hemidiaphragm. So I said, I'm just not seeing any movement on that side. Very basic, but wow, turned around his care. Patients, after they leave the hospital, I have a 24-year-old son. I would love for him to speak to other children or adults at this point who have this. What about like a, Match.com or Patient.com, where they can find each other on the internet and chat?
Yeah, and I think we see, there's a lot of hesitancy in the communication space of kind of brokering peer-to-peer conversations and nurturing that expertise. So I love your endorsement for that. Amber, were you going to say something too?
Yeah, one of our frustrations because we had an 8-month hospital stay and our child was, because they needed to keep him sedated, he was addicted to methadone and Ativan. And when we came home, we realized that there really wasn't any outpatient pain management. So my husband and I were dealing with withdrawals at home, and we were very frustrated because we didn't know where to turn to, and the schedule that they gave us was just too intense for him. And I've had conversations with our cardiologist about that, and just as a parent, knowing that he listened and made changes for future patients, that they do have outpatient pain management follow-up. Even though our child went through, these horrific withdrawals, it's just such a blessing to know that there was an ear listening and there was a change made for future kids.
One of the things I'd love to hear some responses about is, we've certainly formalized listening with patients' experiences, and that's happened because the money's going to move based on those scores in some ways, and I think it's kind of an embarrassing part of healthcare that's how we're ritualizing in some ways and formalizing listening. But when we think about innovation, I guess, one of the things I'd love to, I think there's a feeling that we burden patients by asking for their help. And I'd love some insights for you all to this group of how do you want to be involved? What is an ideal way to share what you think could be done to make things better? And for those of us in leadership positions or in startups or in practices, how can we ask? One of the things I've learned is that we use our family advisory council with very standard ways and forms and bureaucracy around involving patients on feedback of new ideas. And sometimes it's just as easy as like, wait, I've got 20 kids in clinic today and their families, like I can just ask them to look at this for 5 minutes. I mean, how can you advise us on getting patient and family voices really material in the development of new ideas?
I think that it doesn't hurt to ask every single patient family that comes through the door, because I can guarantee you that maybe 95% of those parents would greatly appreciate being asked and would do anything to just innovate new ideas and help doctors. We're the ones at the front lines. We're the ones taking care of our children on a day-to-day. And I think that, just being asked, you would be amazed at the results that you would get from parents. Because
And when you say being asked, do you mean hand you a survey form, a satisfaction? Okay.
No. I mean, get to know
Just
me
asking.
personally,
Yeah.
just on a human level. Because we've had, as a parent, here we are, either 20 weeks learning that our child has a heart defect, and you're trying to remember all of the information that you were told in your high school or college biology class as you're in a state of shock. And, when your child is born, you're handing your most precious gift over to someone that you don't know. And that is probably the hardest thing that you will ever have to do. And being as a person who is so afraid and going through the most difficult time of our lives, getting to know a doctor on a personal level and knowing that that doctor has invested in your son or your daughter, it's life-changing for us.
Beautifully put.
I think one of the things that I feel like sometimes gets missed is taking note on observations of what parents have done without even saying anything. So it's kind of vague, but I'll be more specific. So one of the things that I did was we had the PICC line, she was chewing on it, she was pulling on it, we were scared it was gonna come out, so I went home and I made something and I put it on her and she forgot about it and that was it. In my head, why didn't everybody do that, right? Because I can sew, right? So I was like, well, everybody must do this for their own. They're not giving it to me, so why don't I? And then I realized later that nobody was. But, one of the things that, the nursing care team noticed that it was really cool, and they knew that nobody else was doing it. So, taking note of that type of stuff is where you can really see, where the pain points are. Or even just going in and having, part of the care team say, what do you need today? Not asking is there a problem, trying to sort of, lead the question so that you get an answer, but just simply asking, what do you need? Because that might show you the things that pop up that say, oh my gosh, I just don't know how to get her clothes on. And it's gonna show you these little aspects that might not be super blaringly, jump out at you problems, but are probably issues that happen in the day-to-day life of these families. And so just sort of being very observant of what the hacks that the parents are doing themselves without even really thinking about it because they're just dealing with it. So they're not gonna toot their own horn and be like, look what I did, unless it's us after the fact. But really sort of paying attention and being observant. Because I think, so many times you miss some of those little things just because you're not really observing, exactly what's going
You
on.
gonna say, Marguerite?
Yeah. I'm okay with surveys. As you can imagine, having 2 children with challenging heart conditions, I've been asked to participate in innumerable studies, and I've done it because, in my heart, I feel it's a legacy for my son Matthew. And I have seen dramatic changes in the medical field. But I would add on to that, what my desire would be is to hear your results. Let me know what comes
Yes.
out of the study. Share that with the patients.
I think researchers are really working on that. What is our follow-through to really engage participation in research all the way from the very beginning, right, to the end, so that we kind of reform and change. I mean, for me, as we have a bit of time left, but one of the things I was thinking is that there's such a gestalt to me here today that somehow our organizations really need to have kind of an intake place of ideas that really then are kind of from the crowd listened to. So your comments around we should listen to every single person every single day. We should ask what would change your day or make it better. And we should have and harness the opportunity, I think, in our organizations to say, someone came up with this idea, what do people think about it? So as opposed to formalizing it with panels and rigorous criteria, could we populate a place of ideas, right? And patients and families who have downtime or earnest interest in helping iterate that could be involved. So I think it's a Herculean effort in some ways to open up an idea tank, but it certainly is something that I think patients deserve and want.
And part of that comes from a change in mindset. I'm part of a group called the Society for Participatory Medicine. And the idea of participatory medicine is it's a movement where networked patients are moving from being mere passengers in the system, passive passengers, to responsible drivers of their own health, and welcomed and valued as equal colleagues in the system. And I think if we view people that way, it really fosters innovation.
Okay, in the spirit of 2016, in the world of 140 characters, I say you guys go around, if you got to whisper one tweet into innovators' ears, maybe what would that be? One little soundbite that they could walk away with and think about when they're home. It can be more than 140 characters. We're not going to count. But I mean close. One little whisper, if you got your one shot.
Build trust, build relationships.
That's a good one. You had to start with that. Make it hard on the rest of us. I would say, have a conversation with us as people instead of patients.
Trying to think how I want to say this. Just remember who you are as a person, why you decided you wanted to go to medical school, why you wanted to be a nurse, why you wanted to be in the medical field, period, no matter what position you are. Just remember that heart and follow it. You'll never go wrong. I'm over, but they can come after me.
It was good.
I don't tweet, so let's see. I would say let's bring humanity and passion back into your work. As he said, remember why you wanted to become a doctor or a nurse, and be more compassionate towards families and their needs on a day-to-day basis.
Show love. We need it. When you're under a stressful situation like that, a hug, that personal touch, it means a lot.
Wow, absolutely beautiful.
Such a resounding call for...
Right, so as we talk about 3D printing and genomics and, okay.
I have one special moment to share. As we were in the hospital, our son was crashing out, and my husband and I were called to come in and pretty much kind of say our goodbyes to our son. And I remember leaning down, getting on my knees, and putting my hand on his body as the doctors were working over him. And I was praying, and as she said, someone literally just touched me. And I can't even tell you what that means. It was a nurse in the room, I'm sure, and she touched me, and she gave me such a peace in my heart. And, you know, I think of every single doctor that has ever touched my son's body in any way, whether it be a therapist or a nurse or even someone that came in and changed his bed. I mean, all of those people have played such a big part in his life, and to be shown just a small level of compassion and love is a huge, huge blessing for a parent, and we need it.
So let these voices reverberate in your ears throughout our whole time together, talking about high tech, but this is what people are concerned about.
Passion and purpose.
Yep.
Yeah. Making space.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Thank you
amazing
so
beginning
much.
to the meeting.